Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the NFL show. I am Kayvon Izami. That is Shawn White. This is the Money Down Pod. Follow us on Twitter at Money Down Pod. That's at Money Down Pod on Twitter. Appreciate the like, subscribe, review. All of that stuff means the world to us, so thank you very much. Thank you to all the fans that have followed us along throughout this way and all the ones that are joining us now. We greatly appreciate it. This is the Coaching Hire Show. All the coaches are hired. All the organizations have their new coaches. And now it's time to review and talk about what we like and what we don't like. And boy, do we have some opinions for this one. So, Shawn, first of all, man, I know a big weight is finally off your shoulder. Everybody that has been following us, since day one knows that you are a Jaguars fan. That is why you're Twitter handle is Dumpster Fire Fan. You got that. You wear the gear. You are a loyal Jaguars fan, and your team finally has a coach. It was a hell of a ride, and it was a lot on your shoulders. Every day we were going back and forth, but you finally have your coach. So without further ado, let's start with the Jaguars. I'm going to give you the floor to really just say, because I know you want to talk about the process and everything, so I'm going to give you the floor. I'm going to sit back and relax. And then we'll come back and then we'll start hitting every other team from there.
Yeah, so this process has been kind of draining, and it really shows when you cheer for a dysfunctional-ass team like I do, because if you look back when we first hired Urban, Kayvon, you can attest to this, who'd I say on the pod that I wanted as coach? Who was my number one choice?
Doug Peterson.
Doug Peterson. We have Doug Peterson, and yet somehow I couldn't be super over-the-top hype about it when it happened, because the way the process happened was just draining and just showed how dysfunctional of a team I truly cheer for,
Mm-hmm.
So Doug was the first coach they brought in to interview, and I'm like, oh, man, finally a good decision right here. It really came out that he didn't really care to work for Balky, and I'll get into that in a minute. So I kind of got my hopes down. And then the process dragged on. We had Balky's candidates. Everybody knew who they were. They were kind of the lower tier, the Bill O'Briens out there that we interviewed. Balky was real in on Eberflus. He was a big he wanted Bisaccia, who we interviewed toward the end. I'll get to that too. We had kind of a Game of Thrones front office thing going on. And, I mean, it was behind the scenes. None of it's going to get confirmed because Shad's already came out and was like, no one said they wouldn't work with Balky. Well, the truth is you were asking them if they would work with Balky with Trent in the room with you. So, I mean, I don't know anyone that's going to be like, no, I'm not going to do that, and then just end the interview right there.
That's cutthroat.
So what happened was Byron Leftwich had a great interview. This was weeks after the whole Doug Peterson interview happened. I thought Doug was going to be out of it. Byron Leftwich had an interview. Basically, a lot of the insiders, leakers kind of confirmed, hey, we're going to give him the job. He has Jimmy Sexton as an agent. For those who don't know, Jimmy Sexton is the most powerful coaching agent there is. He gets all these college people crazy extensions. I mean, he's trying to get Arkansas to get double the pay of their coach, and he's been there for like 2 years. Jimmy Sexton's a monster. Jimmy Sexton's Byron Leftwich's agent. He came in. He had worked with Chip Kelly when Balky was there. Balky left the room. They're trying to sign the paperwork, get on the dotted line to hire Leftwich. And Jimmy Sexton and Leftwich like, I'm not working with Trent Balky. Hit a snag completely. And then the process ended up being the most dysfunctional coaching search imaginable. Until maybe when we talk about the Texans, they're trying to get up there. I don't know what they're doing competing with us for this. But those two organizations, man. But the way we did this was terrible. Because what happened was they kind of messed around with Eberflus, messed around with Hackett. They both took jobs. Then it became, we'll try to get Kevin O'Connell from the Rams. But they didn't interview him a first time and couldn't give him a second interview between the Super Bowl window because this was Balky trying to save his own skin and get somebody under him without having anyone to answer to. Finally, once the Leftwich thing fell through, once Balky was a foregone conclusion that he would be in the building, they circled back around to this whole idea that we're going to have now. So the team's going to hire an EVP, most likely Spielman, to be over top of Balky. They're also going to hire an assistant GM under Balky. It's kind of going to neuter him in power, and I believe that that's kind of the thing that put over the top for Doug Peterson to come back into the fold. This was like 47 days of not having a head coach from interview to interview. They started with Peterson and ended with Peterson. And I'm very happy about that. I've got to be honest, that's my favorite hire. That's who I wanted to start with. But the process really does reflect what being a Jags fan is like, because you deal with such dysfunction that even when you trip into really good decisions and hire really good people, you kind of feel meh about it every now and then. But I'm getting back on the hype train now that Doug's kind of done his interview. You feel good. You know he's going to work well with Trevor. You saw Trevor be happy about it. So I love the hire. I mean, he was my number one choice. But man, what a terrible process to get to that point. And that's got to be called out. I do believe Tony Khan behind the scenes had a lot to do with making sure the right choice was handled. He kind of led it a little bit. And you could actually tell when Doug did his presser, he mentioned Tony Khan twice about who he's excited to work with. So even though we're a bottom 5 to 7 ownership right now, Shad's 71. You never know when he might turn the reins over to Tony. And I do feel like we'd be in the upper echelon of ownership then, because I feel like Tony would be more hands-on. But Shad's just a hands-off owner, and that EVP is going to be very needed. I'm just glad we ended up with an offensive guy to develop Trevor Lawrence, because that's the franchise right there. And I'm happy with the hire. Terrible process, happy with the hire. How'd you feel about it? Because I'm sure you felt about the same way that I do. I'm just close to it.
Yeah, I mean, I was right there with you. I said when you told me to take a guess of who I thought that you wanted as your head coach, I guessed Doug Peterson. So I was right there with you months ago when you asked me that question. So you got the right person. On a side note, Trevor Lawrence is clearly very excited about him too. I mean, he's been tweeting about him. He said, we got the right guy, talking about ice cream, all that stuff. That's really important. Like, I know Trevor Lawrence is young, but you got to keep guys like that happy early. And that is a very important part of this. So you got the right guy, but look, the process was just downright embarrassing. And it's kind of crazy if you think about it, bro, because it really turned into the fan base didn't get what they fully wanted. And the Jags didn't also, like if you think about it, the fan base wanted Balky gone. They wanted Balky gone. That was like what they wanted.
And I think that's why Leftwich had so much steam, by the way. The big appeal to Leftwich for most fans was he was straight up not working with Balky.
Exactly. And also Leftwich he's a interesting prospect. He's a good prospect as a head coach. He's going to be a good head coach one day in this league. And also he had the Jacksonville ties. Like, people were excited about Leftwich, and rightfully so. And then you add on to it that he was not going to work with Balky. And bro, I really think that Peterson wasn't going to work with Balky either. But I'm going to be honest, and this is just me thinking. I could be completely wrong on this. But I think Peterson started to look around the landscape and realize he's not getting a head coaching job this term. He knew he had no shot at the Dolphins. They weren't even looking at him. He wasn't doing anything with the Texans. The Saints didn't even really reach out to him. Every other position was filled. And I think he was looking around and saying, do I really want to wait another year and see if something then happens? And I think Peterson gave a little bit away, a little leeway, and said, you know what? I will work with Balky if you guys go and hire someone else above him, blah, blah, blah. When maybe a couple of weeks before that, when he thought he had more options, maybe he wasn't willing to give that leeway. That's just a gut feeling, something I thought of. But I think that maybe he came around to it once he realized this is it. Otherwise, I have to wait a whole nother year to maybe get a job. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think because the reports that Spielman was in the building really it really started happening about 2 days before the second Peterson interview. So I do think they're connected in a way, because a lot of people were reporting that if Spielman was still in Minnesota, Peterson would have been their guy off the start, like the favorite to land it. So I do think they're a little bit connected. Like I said, we'll have to see about Spielman getting announced. I know there's a league process that we're doing about getting an EVP. I believe you do have to Rooney rule the EVP. And with all that's going on right now, even though you hate it, it's probably going to be 2 sham interviews and a hire, really. But I mean, that's kind of what the Rooney rule is at this point. If that's your guy, I mean, you got to go do your interviews still. But that's kind of the process that's in the backlog for that. I believe Peterson probably relented a little bit and was like, well, okay, if you're going to keep him there, fine, but I just need someone that's going to make sure that I'm not getting ran over on personnel decisions constantly. And I believe that I believe Tony probably convinced Shad that, hey, we need a guy over Balky and probably another guy under Balky, because Balky just has too much power in the structure right now. So I think that's probably where that came from. I do agree that you're probably right, though. I think Peterson probably did look out and say, okay, if you give me some help with this front office power structure, I can't beat having Trevor Lawrence as quarterback. This is going to be my best opportunity to have the best young quarterback I can have over the next year or two. And I do think that's what flipped his decision making on coming there and being able to work with Balky in the building. You're right about that. That's how I feel about it too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But again, at the end of the day, it's a great hire. Trevor's happy, Peterson's happy, and Peterson's going to do a hell of a job with Trevor. Another thing is Peterson's tough, but Trevor's mentally tough as well. So it's going to work well together. He's going to be hard as hell on these guys. He's going to be very hard on Lawrence, and I think Lawrence will be able to take it just fine. The issue is, though, and this is something way down the road, we don't need to get into this, is Balky's eventually, something's going to have to happen there, because we've seen Peterson, when he starts to have success, he wants a little bit more power. It happened with the Eagles. The Eagles weren't willing to do it. Things started to separate. What hopefully for you Jags fans will happen is Spielman comes in, Balky goes, and Spielman and Peterson are there in a joint connection and relationship. That would be the most ideal. I do just want to say this, though, real quick. It is a flat-out embarrassment how the process went down, dude. It really is. It's just pathetic how they started to just randomly. And I think it's fair to mention that I kind of think, even though it was Leftwich's choice to drop out, I kind of think they did him a little salty, bro. This is a guy that loved the Jaguars. This is a guy that played for the Jaguars. This is a guy that the fan base absolutely wanted. And they kind of just kept him. They kind of just said, yeah, we really like you. We want you. And then they just kept him here. And why they just kept bringing in other interviews. And they kept him here. And I know a lot of that was his choice because he didn't want to sign the line without Balky being there. But it just, they kind of just dangled him right there. And I feel like it was a little messed up how they went about it. Again, it's politics. It's how it works. He didn't want to work with Balky. Khan clearly didn't want to get Balky. It was a shit show of a mess. But at the end of the day, Jacksonville fans should be happy because they got someone that is a proven quarterback winner. And that's all that matters.
I was going to say, it is rough how they did Leftwich. Honestly, I think Leftwich kind of had a big ball play, though. Now, I think he literally kept it in because if you saw the dominoes fall, everyone that Balky aligned with just took other jobs or either said no or either was just such an underqualified candidate that you just couldn't justify hiring him, especially with Trevor Lawrence there. So it was funny. I think they kind of drug it because I think Balky's last stand was kind of like, okay, well, give me O'Connell. And then O'Connell got announced to the Vikings, and they hadn't even interviewed him to start with, which was dumb on Balky's part anyway. But I think that's where that happened. And then finally, Doug came through with the whole Spielman front office thing. I will say this, Shawn didn't really give Trent like this great backing at the press conference either. Like they were asking him tough questions. Like they asked him why he has Balky still here, and he was like, "Well, he's under contract." Like that's not the best like backing of all time either. So it wouldn't shock me if Balky doesn't either step down or move on after his contract's up because I'm sure Shawn. I'm pretty sure that Shawn's just moving him to a glorified pro scouting role at this point, and it's like I don't want to have to pay him to sit at home and do nothing kind of thing, which makes sense as well. I do want to say I do. Even though I was shitting on Shawn for this Byron situation, I can't understand where he's coming from that you don't want to hire a first-time GM and a first-time head coach.
I get it.
Maybe. So I do get that. But still, Shawn is kind of a bottom six owner, really, in my opinion, at least, just because he's so hands-off. He just doesn't care about football ops that much. And keep this in mind, Jags fans, I'm sorry about this too. I don't live in Jacksonville. I do think he does a ton for the city. So I think a lot of Jags fans are like, oh, he helps the city out a ton. Like he's renovated a ton. He's building the practice field and everything. So, yeah, he's a great businessman, all that. I'm glad he helps the city out. I don't live there, so I can't really attest to that part. But as just a football owner, he's definitely probably bottom 7 owner in the league. And this process really shows why. He needs an EVP bad. The organization ran a lot better when Coughlin was there. Coughlin was just too old and crotchety to keep our top talent. And kind of drove Jalen Ramsey and all them away. He really needs an EVP between him and the front office because he's just too hands-off without it. I do think we're going to hire one. I love the Doug hire. Terrible process. Tripped into really good results, let's be real. But then if you're done with this, let's go to the Texans because I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah.
I mean, I understood our front office strife because it was a power struggle. I mean, it was a dysfunctional power struggle, but it was a power struggle. I don't know what's happening with the Texans, man. They all seem aligned, but they're like, they're throwing names out there. They love McCown, but then just don't hire McCown. If you love him that much, just hire him. Who cares about optics at this point? Well, I mean, you hired Lovie Smith. I don't get the Texans one bit. Let me start with your reaction on that, though. How are you feeling about the Texans? Can you kind of break down what's going on at all? Do you understand what they're doing?
No, I don't think anybody, if anyone tells you they understand what the Texans are doing, they're lying to your face. That no one understands what the Texans are doing. And I understand, I do just want to hit on this. I understand your point about if you love McCown so much, just hire him, don't care. I think this is a different situation. Bro, I don't think they can do that. I think it would have been a disaster if they hired McCown, dude.
Do you think the NFL stepped in on that?
I think the NFL did. Like, I'm to the point where I think shit really went down where it was like, you are not hiring this guy. It would have been the worst possible situation ever, dude. I mean, it would have been so bad. And it's like, I don't mean to laugh because it would have been terrible, but that's just what's going on with the Texans right now. And it's messed up, bro, because what's going to end up happening is Lovie Smith is a hell of a coach. Like, the guy coached the Bears to the Super Bowl with Rex Grossman as his QB. Like, the guy is a really good coach. The guy when Tampa Bay was winning at first, it was because of him. And then they fired him and promoted Dirk Cutter as a little maneuver move to get closer to Jameis. And then everything went to hell. The first season with Jameis and Lovie, they went 9-7. They were on their way up. And then when they fired Lovie and hired and promoted Dirk, it was a shit show. So, like, Lovie Smith is a very good coach. The issue is he's much older now, and putting him as the head coach now with this team is just setting up for another season of David Culley, where you're just going to end up maybe being a little bit better than expected, but still being really bad, where something needs to change. And what's going to happen is they're probably going to hire Josh McCown as the OC, and they're probably going to eventually move him up to head coach. That's what makes sense. The big thing to me at the bottom of all this is Nick Caserio wants power over the head coach. Look, he wanted to do it in New England, and supposedly he did, and Bill Belichick just flick that stuff off. He was doing it last year with David Culley, where he was telling him in his ear during games what to do. And that's why he wanted Josh McCown, because he knows he can completely control Josh McCown. They just couldn't do it at this point. So instead, they hired someone that would be willing to take the head coaching job and that he could still boss around. Even though Lovie Smith has so much cachet, he still can kind of talk his way into Lovie Smith of doing different things. It's a disaster. It's honestly unfair to me. And I know a lot of people are going to say, how can you say someone getting a head coaching job is unfair? Just look at how this process has gone down and look at what they did with David Culley. It's just a bait. They're just putting him there as a chess pawn, waiting to move him eventually. That's what this hire is all about. It's harsh to say, but that's what it is.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, 1 or 2 years. You think he gets 1 or 2?
I would probably give it 2, just because it would be so bad if they did back-to-back 1 years.
I mean, at this point, I'm not putting anything past him.
I'm not putting it past him. I wouldn't be shocked.
Where we had the bulky issue, and he's another one kind of like Caserio, where they kind of act like they want to be a coach and a GM for some reason, but Caserio is just much more well respected. They have an Easterby issue too, man, because Easterby, while nobody knows what the guy's doing, and a lot of this stuff gets to be propaganda at some point, but you can't tell me that he doesn't influence to a certain extent what goes on in that front office, because he's so close to McNair. And I was talking about Shawn being a bottom 7 owner. McNair's a bottom 3 owner, man. Yep. Like this McNair, at least.
Yep.
The decisions he makes are just crazy. I mean, just crazy shit. He gave Bill O'Brien all that power. I mean, we were texting about it last night. I don't think anyone really gives Rick Smith the props he deserved for the drafting he did with the Texans early on in the 10s. but he drafted great players. They had good teams. They were up and coming. They were battling with Peyton Manning. Then they were battling with Luck. They were a well-run franchise then. And
Agreed.
then Rick Smith had to go take care of his wife, and they gave Bill O'Brien all this power, and it's been downhill ever since, man. I mean, I don't know what they're doing really at all. The coaching search they did, it was a power struggle for us, dysfunctional. This coaching search was like zeroed in on 4 people and then hired someone out of left field the night before. Like I said, I do feel like the NFL had to have some kind of come to Jesus moment with them where they were like, look, you're choosing between a guy who has a lawsuit against us for not having fair hiring opportunities, and you're going to hire someone that's never coached in college or the league before.
It would have been terrible.
So I'm assuming McCown's going to become the quarterback coach. That's what it looks like. It looks like it's going to be Pep Hamilton and OC, and then McCown's going to be on the staff in some way.
Yep.
It wouldn't shock me if this year doesn't go the way they want if they didn't promote him after a year. It really wouldn't shock me at all. I just don't understand. Like, this had to be like plan D, because there's no way you're just promoting Lovie Smith when you could have just kept Culley at this point. Why are you even paying Culley off to not be there if you're just going to promote his DC? It makes no sense. We fell into a good decision. They just made the worst decision. Like, I don't understand what's going on with the Texans. I really don't. They do. I mean, and the thing is, they have plenty of capital. They have draft picks. They have the number 3. They have Watson out there who they're going to be able to get rid of at some point. I don't know what they're doing, man, but it's an interesting scenario to watch play out on a day-to-day basis.
It's just crazy. It's just crazy how this is like the wild thing to me is it's crazy how quick a franchise can flip so bad, bro. Like the Texans have always just been like a weird franchise, but I was telling you last night, they haven't been like when you think of the last 10 years, the shit organizations, the shit teams in the NFL, the Texans don't come on my mind unless we're talking the last 2-3 years here. I looked it up from 2014 all the way until 2019, they won 9 games or more. And then before that, they won 12 in 2012, 10, 9, 8, 8. Like, they win football games. And then out of nowhere, this team just completely turned around once they fired Rick Smith, and then once they let Bill O'Brien kind of do his whole power move and all that, and then fired him. Ever since that, it has just been an absolute disaster. And they're somehow trying to find their way here. They were kind of just leaning on Deshaun Watson's shoulder so great that he's going to be able to lift them up. And Deshaun was smart enough to say, I'm out of it. I'm not letting you guys ruin my career by putting all this weight on my shoulders. And rightfully so by him. He did that. And now it's just been a disaster. And they're now really going in a really, really bad spot. And my thing about the Texans is this, to what you were saying. I honestly think, bro, that they fired David Culley and had a whole plan involved where they were going to hire Josh McCown. But they were going through the process to make it seem legit. And then when this Flores news got dumped on them, they had absolutely no shot of hiring McCown after that. Whether the NFL got involved or not, I believe they did. After that, they had no other choice but to say, and I think at that point, they probably looked at each other and said, damn, we should have just kept Culley. But I don't think they ever thought it was going to get to this point. They never even thought forward enough like that. And that's what they ended up doing with Lovie Smith. But it's crazy. Like, Texans fans, man, really, for the most part, other than the Falcons Super Bowl run, they've done better than the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, they have been a better franchise in terms of winning football games. Maybe not in terms of just how the franchise runs, but winning football games, they've done better over the last 10 years. Other than that, those couple years with the Falcons. So, like, it's just wild what is now happening to the Houston Texans.
Yeah, I got to give credit to Shawn on that, and a little bit of our division's horrible, man.
Yeah, but bro, even before Deshaun Watson got there, man. I mean, 2011, 10-6, 2012, 12-4, 9-7, 10-6, 9-7. Like, I get it. Your division was horrible, all that stuff. But if you're that bad of a franchise, you still don't win games. And remember, they never even had a quarterback until Deshaun came. It was like throwing random guys in there all the time. So Deshaun definitely built it up to the point where we were like, okay, now they're actually like scary good where they could make some noise. but they were never this dysfunctional. They were better than a lot of the other teams out there that are super dysfunctional.
Yeah, and I can say this too. Like, and I mentioned this on text when we were talking too. I think a lot has to do with the new McNair being the
I think it's a
owner as
great
well.
point.
The old McNair, for all the flaws, there was all the rumors. I'm not going to speak on those necessarily because I don't know like exactly, but you about the personal like type of person he was.
Yeah.
But as an owner, he was a great owner. Like, he ran the franchise well. Like, the franchise functioned at a high level. The Cal McNair just, I don't know. He just doesn't seem like he knows how to run a team, to be honest. It's almost the opposite. It's almost like where the Jags and Texans are both dysfunctional. Jags fans would probably be happier if Tony was running the show, and that's Shawn's son. Whereas the Texans fans would just love to have Cal's dad back. I can't think of his first name. Is it both Cal? Like,
I think it is. Dude, my thing on this is I actually think, and this is just me speculating, I actually think the issue is that Cal doesn't care. I honestly think Easterby's the one running the show. Like, I really don't think – I think McNair, the son, whatever the son's name is just sitting back. I've got this NFL team. And that's why there's so much craziness and no one knows what's going on, because so many people – like, he got manipulated by Bill O'Brien to fire Rick Smith. I mean, that was, like, reported. When Rick Smith had to step away because his wife got cancer – Bill O'Brien kind of nudged his way up in there. And when Rick Smith came back, there was such a big bond between O'Brien and the owner. They just nudged Smith out of there. So you can get in that owner's head clearly. And I think a lot of people are in his head, and there's just shit going everywhere.
Yeah, well, Bill's the one that promoted Easterby anyway. So, like, that's who got Easterby close to the owner at that point. I think the only reason Bill O'Brien's probably not still there is because he made such a terrible decision with Hopkins. Like, it made him look like an absolute joke that they sent Hopkins over, especially for that little, knowing that, like, Ramsey and all of them fetched 2 1s and Hopkins went for a 2. Like, so I think that's probably where that is. Just a dysfunctional mess there. I will say that I do agree with your plan. They definitely had McCown in place.
Yeah.
And then I guess they had Flores over, but knew they can't fire Flores in a year or two because that already happened in Miami. It would look too suspect. So they just promoted Lovey, man. At that point, that's what they had to do. Because honestly, if you're thinking about it, Davis Mills didn't play bad, man. Davis Mills was solid.
Potential.
You would think that if you were going to build around Davis Mills and you were going to go with an older coach like that, you'd bring in like Jim Caldwell or something. But no, they promoted Lovey up. I do love Pep Hamilton. I think Pep Hamilton's a solid offensive play caller. It's just going to be curious to me to see whether it's a year or two that they don't just get rid of Lovey and put McCown up there. Yeah. It's going to happen because they're too enamored with him. I know everybody says he's friends with Easterby, so maybe that's where it's from. But they're too enamored with McCown for this not to go. They're going to hire him at some point. They're definitely not going to put him on the staff and then let another team interview and hire him. The minute he gets a different interview, they're going to fire Lovie Smith and promote him. That's what's going to happen.
No doubt about it. You're spot on. In a couple years, maybe even a year, like you said, Josh McCown will be the head coach. And it just brings me back to this. I just wish they never fired David Culley because no matter what anybody says, going into this football season, the Houston Texans had the most dysfunctional situation out of any team in the NFL. By far. They didn't have a first-round pick. Their quarterback wasn't showing up. There was a bunch of news around their quarterback. They didn't even have a pick until the 3rd round. They started Tyrod Taylor. He then got hurt, and they had to throw in a guy in Davis Mills who barely played at Stanford because he got hurt so often. And David Culley put all that together and still won 4 football games. Like, David Culley overexceeded my win total for the Texans by 3. I thought they were going to win 1 game, and he overexceeded by 3 wins. I would have liked to see how David Culley would have done in year 2, because I'm not going to lie, I don't think he would have taken him to the playoffs or anything, but I think he could have done a decent job of maybe 5, 6 wins with that team. He actually seemed like he knew what he was doing, and they pretty much just threw that away just to hire a older, more experienced, more credentialed David Culley, really, because I don't want to crap on Lovie Smith because he has done a lot as a football coach, but at this point, that's pretty just much what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. Yeah,
All
just
right.
just a weird thing.
It's a weird thing. And again, even to this day, if anybody says they know what's going on in Houston, they are lying. Um, let's move on to another coaching candidate that got hired today, and that's Dennis Allen with the Saints. I feel like we could do this one next because this one's pretty simple, honestly.
Yeah.
And look, Dennis Allen's been the defensive coordinator there for a long time. I understand he had a head coaching stint in Oakland a couple years ago, or a long time ago. He was super young then. He's clearly learned from. Sorry, did you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, someone was calling you. My bad.
Kayvon getting a phone call out here.
Yeah, he
Sources?
clearly learned from his mistakes. And look, they just promoted him from within. And they think clearly, to me, what the Saints wanted to do is they wanted to keep someone that understood the New Orleans Saints culture. And they felt Dennis Allen was the best person to do that. So they hired Dennis Allen. What are your thoughts on this hire?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard because the Saints situation's so up in the air, especially at the quarterback. I mean, they're going to fall off a little bit. You're not going to be Sean Payton. Sean Payton was scheming up things for Ian Book out there last season. And while Dennis Allen's done a great job with the defense is getting older.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a kind of a rough situation. I could see this being another 2-year stint right here where maybe he's gone in 2 years and they go for a new coach to go with like a younger quarterback, especially if the quarterback doesn't develop. But I will give them one thing. They probably are going to keep Pete Carmichael Jr., which for some reason never gets a head coaching job, kind of like the enemy.
It's so weird, bro. Not that he doesn't get a job. He doesn't give an interview.
Yeah, nobody. And like he's been Peyton's right hand for 12 years now, I think.
And no one talks about it.
So it's going to be interesting. If they get a young quarterback and he looks real good, then maybe eventually Carmichael Jr. will be the Bruce Arians of this generation where he finally gets a head coaching job at some point. But they do have that continuity. I just think the situation's so bad with the cap and everything that you can't really grade it too highly. Everyone kind of knew this was going to happen. They were going to promote it. And I do believe when we were talking about the Rooney Rule, I think this is a good way you could change the Rooney Rule with the whole sham thing. I think if you're going to promote somebody from within, like if you had an interim coach and you're just going to elevate him, or if you have someone retire and you just want to promote one of your coordinators, you probably shouldn't have to do the whole outside candidate rule, if I'm being honest with you.
I agree.
Because, I mean, while I'm sure they did, the Saints are a high-level organization, but I'm sure they really did go with Bieniemy and Flores and really give them a good interview and wanted to talk to them and really do their due diligence. But in reality, if they really wanted to hire Dennis Allen the minute that Sean Payton stepped down, they should be able to do that. Let's be real. But I mean, I'm not huge on the hire because I think the situation's pretty bad. I know you're pretty happy about it as a Falcons fan, especially with the Kamara news, him getting in that altercation. So I think everything's kind of falling right for your Falcons. But if you want to talk about the hire right quick, I'm kind of male, and I think it's more like a C-. Like it's a okay hire, you know.
Yeah. So I'm not gonna lie. I don't think it's a great hire. I think he's a good defensive coach. I don't think he's a good head coach. And I think the Saints have a lot of problems. My problem, though, is I'm really worried. It's a prediction that the Saints are going to be absolutely awful this year. And they're going to trip into Bryce Young or CJ Stroud.
I put that
serious,
into the
man.
universe last week. That was my fault.
I can picture it right now, dude. I can picture it right now. They are going to have who's going to play quarterback? Jameis? Like, Jameis is leaving, bro. He's not playing quarterback. Taysom? I said since day one, if I'm not right about a lot of things, one thing I was dead right on is Taysom Hill is not a quarterback in the NFL, like, at all. They're going to be they have a lot of cap issues. Is Michael Thomas going to play?
Doubt
Is he going to come back and play, or is he going to leave? Are they going to trade him? What's going to happen with Kamara? They've got so many questions and issues. Not a lot of free agents are going to want to go there because it's going to look like a rebuild. I'm telling you, bro, Saints fans might end up tripping right into a top quarterback next year and just ruin my hopes and dreams as a Falcons fan. But if that doesn't happen, I'm very happy about this hire because I don't think it's going to go very well, at least at the beginning for the Saints. Maybe once they get their stuff straight in a couple years with cap and stuff, maybe he has a chance. But right now, man, their situation is terrible. And their quarterback situation might be the worst in the league right now moving forward. I'm serious. I can't think of another situation that is as bad as the Saints situation at quarterback specifically.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. I'd say the Buccaneers are in a pretty bad situation too, which is also in your division. So they're
The
both
one
kind
thing
of
about
there.
the Bucs, though, is they're actually an attractive spot for a lot of people just because of what they just did recently. Like, they could maybe go and get a Jimmy G or someone that can kind of fill in that void for a year or two. You're right, though. If they don't, they're in a very bad spot.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, the Saints might trip into one of these quarterbacks, like you said. I put that out there last week, and you were kind of like, "Oh, I see you've been thinking about that a little bit." That I said that they're going to lose to Taron Armstead too. Like, they're not going to be able to afford his cap hit, I don't believe. So they're going to lose an elite left tackle as well. I think this is going to be a year where they kind of fall off a little bit and just try to fix the cap and do what they can there because their quarterback situation is awful. Let's move on to Mike McDaniel getting hired with the Dolphins. I actually love this hire. I'm high on it. I know you're going to have some drawbacks there that you're going to talk about, but of the Shanahan guys, everyone kind of says that McDaniel's the smartest one. Went to Yale. He's a bright guy, and the way Breer reported it today too, like everyone kind of assumed it was like this, but McDaniel would do the run game plan for the week on Monday and Tuesday, and Shanahan wouldn't touch it. Just completely trusted with him. So when you see this, the LaFleur offense in Green Bay, or you see McVay's offense with the Rams, or even you see Mike LaFleur up with the Jets running the offense, McDaniel's going to run the purest form of Shanahan's offense that's not Shanahan doing it himself. I believe they're going to have the closest run game. Like, no one runs toss sweep more than Shanahan does. I think you're going to see a lot of it with the Dolphins. I think he's going to go get a running back that runs toss sweep. I think he's going to have the game plan going. And he hasn't called plays, which I know that's what your apprehension is going to be on it. But I believe that he's so smart and so good with the run game that he probably already had so much input on the play calling for Shanahan that I think that he'll be able to breeze through that. Also, love his fit with Tua. I'm not necessarily a big Tua believer, but the front office of the Dolphins are. They love him for some reason. I mean, that was Greer's guy drafted. Ross seems to be all in on him. If you're going to have Tua be successful, you've got to have a strong run game and let him do the quick passing Jimmy G type offense we saw with Shanahan and the 49ers. I think that's the best situation for Tua. So I actually love the hire for the Dolphins. I think they fit perfectly. And I like McDaniel as a head coach right here.
Yeah, so real quick, the happiest person today should be Tua. Tua should be the happiest person in the NFL today because of this hire. Because ever since Tua has entered the NFL 2 years ago, it's been 1 foot in and 1 foot out. The organization likes him. The head coach isn't fully enamored with him. He has to compete as a QB competition with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Then you know what? All media questions all year long. Deshaun Watson's going to get traded here. How do you feel about going to Houston? How do you feel about this and that? There has never been full arms surrounded Tua. Today, for the first time ever, a coach who is a very bright offensive coach sat there and said, I want that guy. Let's be very clear here. Mike McDaniel, as Shawn just alluded to, is a very smart guy. If he didn't get a coaching job this year, he sure as hell was going to get one next year. So
you were talking about him for the Falcons job last year. You loved him, but he was just a little under, like he didn't have enough experience there. You've loved him for years, so
yes, for a long time. So Mike McDaniel is smart enough to know that he doesn't take this job if he doesn't like Tua, because he knows he's going to have other jobs. Because the 49ers are always going to be a hot team, and as long as he's there under Kyle Shanahan, he's going to have his, especially with the way people are talking about him. So he doesn't touch this job unless he believes in Tua and that he can develop Tua, because the ownership and GM, just like you said, made it very clear Tua is their guy. So that's really important out there. Dolphins fans that don't like Tua, you better get used to it, because they are going forward with Tua, and Mike McDaniel personally picked him. So that's something I want to clear up. I love the hire too. I just think it's always fair to point out that the man hasn't called plays. And we don't see that often in the NFL. Look, really, to be honest with you, we've only seen it one time. Because Matt LaFleur, he called plays for the for the Titans. He went and did that for a couple years, called plays, and then went to the Green Bay Packers. The only coach that did not call plays is the one that's about to coach in the Super Bowl on Sunday in Zach Taylor under Sean McVay. He didn't call any plays under Sean McVay. And look, things worked out for him so far because he got Joe Burrow, and it's not just Joe Burrow. He's done a good job as a coach and all that stuff too. And I think Mike McDaniel is going to do great. Also, I really fell in love with him after I heard that Albert Breer report and after I saw some of the things these players came out and said. Like, dude, Kyle Juszczyk, I want to read this quote. He came out and said this today. Mike has been an instrumental part to our success on offense the past 5 years. Juszczyk wrote in a text. His creativity, ingenuity, and ability to connect with his players is unmatched. We would not be the offense we are today without him. We are so incredibly happy for his opportunity to lead a team as a head coach, but we will be sorely missed with him gone. So he will be sorely missed with him gone. So like that's big praise, you know, of a player saying that. Debo came out and had a really long talk about how so much Mike McDaniel has done for his career and all that stuff. He's a player's coach. He's an offensive coach, and he's a run-centric coach. He's going to do very well, but the play calling is a lot harder, in my opinion, to just get down than most people think, especially when Kyle Shanahan was always called. It's not like in Kansas City where it's mixed. Sometimes Bieniemy calls it, sometimes Reed calls it. Shanahan was always calling the plays. And the second thing is they still need to update their personnel. While he is a really good mind, I don't care how smart you are. You need to get some better personnel to have success. They don't have the running back to be able to do what he wants to do offensively. Now, like you mentioned last night, do they go get Raheem Mostert? Do they draft one of these guys like Isaiah Spiller, Kenneth Walker out of the draft? We'll see. They have the 29th pick overall. They got to get that right. But I love this for Tua, and I love this for Jalen Waddle. They will use Jalen Waddle like they used Debo. Not more as a running back and all that stuff, but with the way they use him in the passing game, that's what you're going to start to see with Jalen Waddle. Even though you saw it a lot last year, you're going to see it even more and more creativity with him at under center.
Yeah, completely agree. Like I said, I love the hire. I can tell you one thing too. In the later rounds in this draft, they're drafting a fullback. I can promise you that. Yeah. And they're probably going to work to keep Gesicki, and who's a free agent in the offseason. I do think they'll upgrade personnel around him. They got to get a running back in. But I like the hire. That's kind of looking up for me. It just, if you're going to go all in on Tua, it's like we've been saying with these other coaching hires, with the Jags and Peterson, with this one with Tua, even McDaniels going to the Raiders with Carr. If you got a quarterback that you really want to keep at a high level or either push to the next level, got to have an offensive guy out there, in my opinion, especially one that's a play caller. So that's why I like the hire. He's got to learn to call plays, like you said. I do like the hire there. You want to go to the other hire that hasn't called plays before, but is now going to have to. So that's O'Connell going to Minnesota. Yeah, and he's the hardest person to text because it literally autocorrects to McConnell every time. So, so I'll be like, wow, what did I just say? I'm like, oh, yeah, I was trying to say O'Connell, but I mean, here's McConnell. Anyway, that's an interesting hire, in my opinion, because where we know that McDaniel would do the run game stuff, nobody really knows what O'Connell does under McVay other than be an offensive assistant, which is how it was with Zach Taylor. So that's kind of the blueprint for it. Again, you're going somewhere that doesn't have Joe Burrow, which I do think Zach Taylor can thank his lucky stars he got Joe Burrow out there. But they do have Kirk Cousins, and they do have a receiver that he can definitely put in that Cooper Kupp role and Justin Jefferson. I think if you love Justin Jefferson, if you're a big fantasy player and love him, if you're just love the player, you got to love the hire for that reason, because I think he'll run the Cooper Kupp role in this offense. He's going to get a ton of targets.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a little shaky on him more so than McDaniel, just because I don't really know what he does. Like, you know what I mean? But he was with Kirk Cousins in Washington at one point. I think he might have called plays then, is the only difference. But I don't think it was with much success. I think he's going to be a solid hire. I mean, a solid one. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. Kind of right there in the meh category. But he's going to be interesting to watch. I think the offense will definitely be upgraded from what they were running with Zimmer.
Yeah, this is a direct correlation in comparison to Zach Taylor. To me, I don't really put these guys in Mike McDaniel and O'Connell in the same boat, even though they're all coming from. Look, this is it, guys. It's a copycat league. Everybody knows this that's watching this video. These guys are trying to find the next Shanahan and McVay. So you're going to try and hire guys like this to help you find those guys. That's just how this works now. That's what we're seeing, and that's what they're trying with O'Connell. Supposedly, he's a really smart guy. That's what everyone talks about him. He's a smart guy. The Vikings do have talent. And if Mr. Rodgers leaves Green Bay, it opens the door for success immediately. Okay? So it's not like he's walking into a situation where Zach Taylor was, where Zach Taylor went to the Bengals and they knew everybody knew they were going to be crap. The Vikings still have expectations to make a wild card spot, and if Rodgers leaves, to win the division possibly. So it's going to be different in that terms of the pressure is going to be on quickly because you actually have players that can play, and you do have a average to decent quarterback in Kirk Cousins. So I'll be interested to see. But like you said, to me, if we were giving out grades, it's a C plus, just because I don't know, man. Like, you don't know. He's smart. He's an offensive-minded coach. I like both of those things. He worked under McVay. But, bro, when you start to get on that sidelines by yourself and you don't have McVay there, you don't have Shanahan there, and you've never called plays before, really, things can change real quick. So it's all about who he hires on the defensive side of the ball. That's going to be important. We'll see what happens. But to me, it's an average hiring.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I will say he does have probably the smartest person in the league as his GM. Have you seen Quessie's, his resume? He was working like Fortune 500 hedge fund people. I mean, he's smart as can be. So that's a good thing for him. What coach do you want to hit next?
Yeah, let's move on to the New York Giants and Dable here.
Perfect. You go ahead on that.
This is one of my favorite hires of the year, if not my favorite. I absolutely love this hire. This is a home run hire to me. It's a hire that needed to happen. If it wasn't going to be Dable, I wanted it to be Flores, but I wanted it to be Dable more because of the offensive-minded coach here. I don't think that Dable's going to turn Daniel Jones into Josh Allen. I'm not going to go all crazy and talk about like that. But I do think that he can create Daniel Jones into a serviceable quarterback. I do think he can turn this offense into a fun watch. Last year was unwatchable. It was so disgusting and boring. It was unwatchable. I think that he can turn Saquon Barkley back into a player that we're excited to watch again. I just think he has a really good chance of creating an exciting offense there. I think they have some fun pieces, and I really like his pedigree. Dable is one of my favorite hires here this year.
Yeah, I think between Dable and Peterson, I think those are the two best hires in my opinion. Peterson because he works so well with Trevor, and Dable because him and his GM come in perfectly aligned. Yeah. They know exactly what they want to do together. They know exactly how they want to build a team. They're going to be like-minded in that aspect, and they go to an organization that has been firing coaches a lot lately, but usually the Morrows are patient. So I do see them kind of working out. I know they're going to try to upgrade around Daniel Jones and build around him. But you know what? The best part of doing something like that is you build a team around him and he's not the guy. You have a team ready for that rookie quarterback that you can go out and find and get on your own. And I do think that Joe Shane and Dayball knows exactly what to look for in a quarterback because they had it in Josh Allen all those years.
No doubt.
So I think that was an A-plus hire. Him and Peterson are my favorite hires of the cycle. Perfect on Dayball. Giants fans should be very happy. I think the future's bright with that because you got to start at the top. Well run. There you go. I love it.
Nice. Let's move on to Chicago. Matt Eberflus, defensive coordinator of the Chicago of the Indianapolis Colts, now head coach of the Chicago Bears. What are your thoughts on this?
He's my worst hire of
I knew
everybody.
it.
Yeah.
I knew it.
I hate the hire. And I didn't hate it at first. I hate it now after watching his press conferences and just his philosophies.
I agree.
He's not going to call plays. He's not going to call the defense.
I know.
Like that's what you're known for.
Yeah.
I understand the need to check out on other. I understand the need to check through the building and do all this other stuff. But you're a defensive guy, man. You got to call your defense. I don't understand it at all. They hired Hightower from the 49ers. Hightower's kind of a joke, man. Like the 49ers special teams, outside of the Packers game, which had the worst special teams, the 49ers had bad special teams all year, man. It's just a weird setup. And I hate it for Justin Fields, man, because you see it with Zach Wilson. You saw it with Trevor, with Urban and the staff they had. You see it with Zach Wilson having Saleh as a head coach, who also is doing the same thing, by the way. He didn't call plays either, and that defense looked horrible, and that's what he was known for. You just feel for Justin Fields, man, because you really got to hope that this Getsy hire knocks it out of the park. But at best, if Getsy makes Fields look dominant next year, Getsy's getting a job, dude. Like, that's what happens in the league. And then you got to knock out another home run OC hire. I just don't like the way the press conference went. I'm not a big fan of what he's saying. I'm not a big fan of him not calling plays. I think this could end up being a disaster for Justin Fields, really, if you ask me. And that kind of worries me a bit.
I hate it for Justin Fields. It really has absolutely nothing to do with the Eberflus. Look, the press conference and all that stuff, it does mean something to me. I do watch him, but it's not going to change my opinion too much on a person. My main thing is this is just terrible directional organization by they do not understand how to move in the right direction. Jacksonville, even though it was a disgusting and embarrassing process, at the end of the day, they hired an offensive coach. That's what matters. You have a guy in Justin Fields who could be an absolute freak, who is an absolute freak. He could be amazing. You have to do everything you can. You have to do everything in your power to get all the juices out of him and make him that guy that he is supposed to be and that he should be. And the fact that they didn't go out and hire someone that can do that is disappointing. It's so disappointing. And if I'm a Bears fan, I'm incredibly disappointed. And it's not to put down Matt Eberflus. It's not to put him down. It's just, it's not the right direction. And as a GM and as an owner, you're supposed to be smart enough to understand what your organization needs in the direction it needs to go. And when you have a guy like Justin Fields, you have to do everything in your power to make sure you do everything to get all of the talent out of him and show it on the field. And they're not doing that with the hires that they're making. And I really feel bad for him. It's going to be tough to overcome this, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, they've been a dysfunctional organization too. And this just, it doesn't make sense the direction they're going in, like you said. I think they should have went hard at Shane and Daboll. That's what she should have done. Justin Fields is a lot comparable to Josh Allen. He doesn't quite have the arm strength, and he's not as big, but running the ball as a quarterback and still having the arm strength he had, you should have wanted Daboll off the start. That should have been your number one target there. I don't understand the going for the whole defense thing.
Not even Daboll. I'm saying, first of all, you're right. Daboll should have been the number one. What Peterson should have been the number two. Look, yeah. I'm the Wentz and Fields have some similarities.
Oh, yeah.
They both have big arms. They both can move decently well. And Peterson did a really good job with Wentz until a lot of things happened mentally for Wentz. Like the fact there was a lot of options out there. It wasn't like it was just, oh, there was no good offensive coaches out there. You're spot on. There was a lot of options, and it's disappointing.
Yeah, and then, I mean, to top it all off, if you want to put the icing on the cake, they hired Ryan Poles. He's been with Bieniemy for 5 years now.
Yeah.
Didn't even give the dude a shot. So, I don't know if that was an ownership push or a Bill Polian push because Polian ran the search. But it's so weird to me that Bieniemy just doesn't get a job at all, man.
So sad.
Especially from your assistant GM that's been with you for 5 years.
So
That's
sad.
so strange to me. I don't
Yeah.
understand that at all. Yeah, the Bears are just up in the air. I'm going to keep a close watch on that and on Fields because I'm high on Fields. Fields is my number 2 quarterback behind Lawrence in that draft. I'm high on Fields, so I wanted to see what they were going to do, and I just don't like that direction. Going to pay attention to that a lot too because Rodgers is getting older, and if Rodgers leaves, that division's just up in the air.
Yeah.
Just don't love the direction there at all either. So that leaves us what? Raiders, McDaniel, and Broncos with Hackett. Which one do you want to go with?
Let's do Hackett on the Raiders.
All right. Okay. So the Hackett hire for me, I think Hackett's actually a good dude. He's kind of funny if you watch his like interviews and stuff. I think he'll get along well with a locker room and stuff. Broncos are going to have to answer the question that everyone in the NFL has to answer. Who's your quarterback?
Yeah.
That's really what it's going to come down to. And when he first got hired, you went in depth on that. I don't love the hire if you're thinking, this is going to get me Aaron Rodgers. I agree with you on that. You can't really put all your eggs on the Aaron Rodgers basket. But if you think Hackett can develop a quarterback, you got to go find one because I do like his offenses a little bit. He didn't really do a ton with the Green Bay stuff. I think he did their red zone implementation. But as a Jags fan, he did do well with Blake Bortles and not a lot of talent those 2 years he was there. Kind of got scapegoated, even though it was more Bortles' fault, if we're being honest. He's got to get a quarterback. I like Hackett as a guy. Not sure about the leadership type thing. I know he's a guy's guy and he's like fun in the locker room, but not sure if he's going to be able to push players like that. But the pushing players and the quarterback is my concern. The Broncos just got to get whatever quarterback they're going to have because that quarterback is not in their room right now. So that's really what that's going to come down to, in my opinion.
Yeah, to me, I don't love the hire. I think that they're doing it just to get Aaron Rodgers. And I don't even know if Aaron Rodgers wants to go there. I really don't. And if he does, great. What, you get him for 2-3 years? I guess if he wins your Super Bowl, that's what matters. Hackett was not on the top of my list. I would have rather gone after Mike McDaniel. That was something I said. I would have much rather gone after him and then tried to go after Jimmy G. And I think that would have been a great fit in Denver. I thought that would have been fine until you get another quarterback in there to develop. I think Hackett's a funny dude. I think he's a cool dude. And I think he has had some success. But to me, it was all LaFleur in Green Bay. And to me, he just doesn't move the needle for me. He's just there. He might do a great job, but he's not one of my favorite. And I don't hate it. I don't hate it because I get what they're trying to do. I just don't think it's a smart move.
Yeah, completely understandable there. They have offensive pieces now. They just got to get that quarterback right because that's the thing. They have like 4 good receivers, 2 good backs, 2 good tight ends, and their O-line's solid. You just got to get the quarterback in there. That division's tough too. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. So that leaves us with the Raiders and Josh McDaniels, which, I mean, we've been waiting for McDaniels to pick a job for how long now? I mean, he was almost with the Colts.
I'm going to do something that surprises you here.
Okay.
This is my favorite hire.
For real?
I hate it.
Oh, yeah.
Who the hell says Josh McDaniels deserves a head coaching job? What the fuck has he done? Excuse my language. What has he done? What has Josh McDaniels done? Bro, first of all, he did nothing for Brady. Brady did everything for him. He did nothing when he was in Denver, and I don't think he did anything for Mac Jones. If you put on the tape this year and watch Mac Jones and put side by side the tape in Alabama, they're the same player. He didn't do anything to uplift Mac Jones. Mac Jones literally looked like Mac Jones in Alabama to the Mac Jones in the Patriots. Josh McDaniels to me is old ass news. I have so many Patriots fans, Shawn, that texted me on that day and said, thank God Josh McDaniels is finally gone. They're tired of his offense. It's boring. It's stale. He's done nothing different. He doesn't know how to use weapons that are underappreciated. He has to have top-tier talent to make things really go. To me, man, this move does nothing for me. I don't understand why Josh McDaniels was ever some golden boy that could pick and choose what job he wanted. He also has bad character. I don't care what you say, but anybody that leaves a head coaching job on not even on the 11th hour and 59 minutes like he did with the Colts. That's a bad character move. That's a flaw move. And to think that he is some boy that can just pick and choose who he wants, to me, I don't understand it at all. And this is an issue of why we have guys like Brian Flores firing a lawsuit. Because for some reason, Josh McDaniels is some special man over here that can get whatever job he wants, when you guys have guys like Eric Bieniemy that can't even get a job to save his life as a head coach. So to me, dude, I hate it. It is the worst hire of the offseason for me.
Wow, blew me away right there. That was great. I was not expecting you to go that hard. I thought I was going to be the one going the hardest on the Jags earlier in the show. You came out and just fired right there.
Yeah.
That was a great take. I was more like, it's a meh thing because it's been so long, man. Like, and I understand the whole thing. The whole reason he's getting this is because Belichick taught him everything that Belichick knows. If you haven't noticed, these Belichick guys, man, they try to be Belichick and can't. And I don't care what extra stuff he taught him. He's not going to be Belichick. That's the truth about it. I will say the thing I did like about him is he does adjust game plan well. That Bill kind of taught him to do that on offense the way Bill does it on defense. But you're right, his offenses are kind of stale. And I never know if that's because of Mac Jones or because of whatever. But you're right, Brady ran a ton of that when Brady was there. Let's be real here. Because you saw it with Brady in Tampa Bay. He kind of meshed Arians, Byron, and his offenses together.
Yeah.
So that was more Brady's system. It didn't matter what offensive coordinator was there. Brady always did the stuff that he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree with you on that. It was a very meh hire for me. I know your Patriots friends are happy to have him gone, but I don't know how happy I'd be about having either Bill O'Brien or Gase be my
they're real worried about Bill O'Brien. They're real worried about Bill O'Brien there.
Because if they're talking about having to have talent and get you stuff, that's what Bill O'Brien does in his offense, man. Like they run nothing but ISO routes. Like that's all it is. So that's going to be curious to see with the Patriots offensive coordinator hire. But as for McDaniels, he seems to be putting together an okay staff. It's really going to come down to, can he elevate Derek Carr the way Gruden was doing? I don't know what Derek Carr's ceiling is really. Derek Carr's kind of an interesting one for me. He's kind of that borderline top 12 guy.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you can really elevate his ceiling too much more than what it already is. You kind of just got to make sure he's still playing well. Also, he brought Ziegler over. McDaniel's kind of going to have a lot of say in personnel, and this is the guy who drafted Tebow. That worries me a ton. Like, if you're going to have to build a team around, the Raiders have already been pretty bad at drafting in the first rounds, but usually hit on their 4th and 5th round picks. Maybe Ziegler could keep doing that because the Patriots are kind of solid on the back end. McDaniel worries me if you're going to give him full personnel control, though. And that's going to be interesting to see because, like I said, I don't think you can really extend Carr much further than he already is. I think Carr's kind of where he is. You just got to make sure that you can get him that little bit over the hump or make sure he doesn't go downward. It's going to be interesting to see because he obviously is going to lock himself up with Carr because Carr's going to need a contract in the offseason. Yep. We're going to have to see how that goes. I love your take there, though. I didn't really think about some of those points. Great take on your end there. Meh high for me.
And I just want to say real quick, the Raiders just went from galvanizing around a coach that was player-friendly as all get out. I mean, this man was sit back in Rich Bisaccia and, high five. I mean, this was players coach of all get out to a guy who's going to go in there. And I'm telling you, people think he learned from Denver. He's going to go in there and try and be all tough with these guys. And you think Max Crosby and Darren Waller are going to like that? I don't think he's going to mesh well. Like, I'm not saying it's going to be a disaster because he is a smart guy. I just don't think it's going to be as good as everyone's excited for it to be. And I really don't know how much of an upgrade it is over Rich Bisaccia, to be honest with you.
Well, that's an excellent point.
Yeah. X and O's wise, yeah, okay. He knows more X and O's wise. Rich Bisaccia is a special teams guy. But building a team character-wise, you're not going to beat what they were doing there with Rich Bisaccia, and I have a lot of questions about this.
Great point on that, because a lot of the rallying around Bisaccia was because Gruden was such a kind of asshole in the locker room, and now they're going back to that.
And the thing about that, that's such a good point about Gruden, but the difference is Gruden could do it because he had clout, because he's a Raider. It's Gruden. Everybody freaking loves Gruden.
He had a 10-year deal, too. He wasn't going anywhere.
10-year deal. He wasn't, the owner died for Gruden, like did everything to get Gruden. It was Gruden. Nothing's happening. Josh McDaniels, they start rolling around in there and they don't like Josh McDaniels. You're going to really start to hear it. So really, really good point about how it went from Gruden to bonding over Rich Bisaccia like that. And now you're going back to a guy like Gruden with nowhere near as much clout as Gruden had.
I will say this, an interesting timeline to watch is if they do decide that they don't want to keep Carr and they want McDaniels to bring his own guy in. Could you imagine if he drafted Malik Willis's draft? Essentially slightly upgraded Tebow, just didn't learn anything.
Oh, that would be a disaster. They would be terrible.
Yeah, because that would be something that I could see McDaniels doing. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. You're right on that. I wasn't prepared for that take at all. I'm glad you brought it out.
So you could see it.
Yeah, you brought the flamethrower out at the end. I had the heaters going at the beginning. You brought it out at the end. That was a good show right there. Love these coaching hires. Everyone that's listening, that's a lot of teams right there. We got a ton of people that love these teams. Give me what you like about your coaching hire, what you hate about it. Do you like the direction they're going in? Does anyone that's a Texans fan have any clue what's going on in that organization? Give us your reaction, man. We'd love to respond back to you and hear about stuff like that. Now we can kind of start focusing on some personnel stuff now that these coaches are in. We know what schemes they're going to be running.
Yeah, no doubt. You heard it right from Shawn. Let us know your thoughts. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Why? Let us know. Comment below. We would love to hear your thoughts, and we will talk about it as always. This was the Money Down Pod. That is Shawn White. I am Kayvon Izami. Thank you for tuning in, and we will be back later in the week to our draft show and then to preview the Super Bowl on Sunday. We'll talk to you then.